So the problem we're trying to solve is today on the DeFi protocol or centralized exchanges. The liquidity the users are finding on the marketplace, for the most part, coming from two different, I would say, subset of users. Either it's an organic liquidity, for example, Bitcoin and Ethereum. There is enough demand on the maker side and taker side to basically get enough liquidity for all the type of usage and market. When it comes to an altcoin or a meme coin, the liquidity might be big for a week, 10 days, and then it shrinks and it then re-expands. So then you have a problem of liquidity. So liquidity on centralized exchanges or decentralized exchanges can come either from being organic or coming from market makers. And some centralized exchanges will essentially reward market maker to bring liquidity. Some projects will also reward market maker or maybe engage with the market maker to say, okay, bring liquidity to my token in these different trading venues, usually CeFi or DeFi. But these liquidity services come with a cost, right? And this cost can be very high. And you need to find also the right partners. This is why the market maker industry is a very large one, because there is a lot of demand and they all get their, I would say, their specific knowledge.
It's a pleasure to interview Charles just a few months after the Nebular Summit, and we're currently at Singapore just for Token 2049. I'm super jet lagged. Landed a few hours ago, actually. Charles landed from Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So yeah, tell me what has happened in the last few months for dYdX. The last time that we had a chat, you guys announced the new update, the V5. Tell me what's on the roadmap, but also how is that accepted by the entire community?
Absolutely. So since the launch of the dYdX chain back in December 2023, we've been going from upgrades to upgrades after upgrades, right? So we delivered the V5 upgrade over the summer, but everyone is very excited and focusing now on the next upgrade, which is called dYdX Unlimited. So dYdX Unlimited essentially keep dYdX progressing into further decentralization and also better experience for users in general. So what dYdX Unlimited brings is, number one, it brings permissionless listings, which means you will be able as a user to list any of the assets. We've been already experimenting like permissionless listing, I would say, in stage one over the summer. And one thing we needed to kind of improve was the liquidity for the long tail assets. So listing new assets is something you can do, and it's a unique advantage for DeFi and DEXs like dYdX. But you need to make sure also that the liquidity around those assets is sufficient, so the experience of the users is good enough. So dYdX Unlimited brings essentially a new version of the protocol, which will be an hybrid version between an order book type of exchange and an AMM. So in short terms, it will mean that the long tail assets, which are not qualified and big enough to be part of an order book, will be essentially managed by an AMM. Which is similar in principles to Uniswap, for example. And as soon as there is sufficient liquidity and activity on this AMM, the AMM will be essentially qualifying and graduating to be back into the order book. The order book is the best way to trade assets. This is where the price discovery is the most efficient, and this is where liquidity can be as well optimized in a much better way than AMM. So liquidity provided for long tail assets. This is very important. We keep a very high pace of listings, new assets on dYdX via governance. I think over the past 3 months there was close to 80 new markets listed by the community via governance votes. But this activity in new listings push us to bring these new liquidity systems with AMMs and vault essentially. When these vaults come in, it also gives an opportunity to bring a new feature to dYdX, which are the mega vault. And this is the big second update to mention about dYdX Unlimited. So essentially, a mega vault will be operated by a third party. dYdX as a protocol developer does not trade. And this mega vault team will be essentially assessing constantly the liquidity on the 100 plus trading pairs being traded on dYdX and bringing liquidity to these different markets. So bringing liquidity on demand, essentially. When you bring liquidity on demand as a market maker via this vault principle, you can also potentially generate APR, and this APR will be available also for the users who wants to essentially bring liquidity to the mega vault via USDCs and bringing some and getting some APR in I would say in rewards depending on the market conditions. So if you look at things, there is a kind of very positive flywheel getting built right now within dYdX. If you stake your dYdX, you get USDC. This is the type of rewards you get when you stake dYdX. And you have also the opportunity, if you decide to bring this USDC to work further and bring them into the mega vault of the protocol. So the protocol generates fees. These fees are distributed to the users, and the users can decide to bring liquidity and brings even more rewards. So that's a very, I would say, very excellent flywheel, which brings a lot of value. So number one, permissionless listing. Number two, mega vaults. And then there is some more features which are more for automatic traders and traders via API, such as the permission.
Before we go there, I'm sorry to interrupt. Could you just give me the TLDR of dYdX? Because I feel like we went into the deep water, but let's take a step back and explain what the protocol does for the people that are unaware of it. And then we'll go into how that enables traders to operate better.
dYdX is laser focused since 2018, and 2018 is a long time ago in our space, but still the same laser focus on perpetuals. Perpetuals are derivative contract, derivative futures contract. So it allows essentially users to express their opinion on any crypto asset. It could be Bitcoin, ETH, a meme coin, a real world asset, any of the assets available and listed on dYdX, and deciding to go long, short with leverage. So you don't need to have the asset itself. You just bring your USDC as a collateral, and you can start to essentially take a bet on the future of Bitcoin price or the future of Ethereum price or hundreds of different assets. So essentially, it's a derivative DeFi protocol. We are the biggest one in our space, and the derivative market is the biggest crypto market overall. So if you look at the market of spot, every time there is one Bitcoin or one ETH which is being exchanged on the spot exchange, there is 10 times more which are being exchanged on the derivative market. And you find exactly the same pattern in the equity market, for example. So derivatives are very important for the overall liquidity and for the price discovery of our space. So this is what dYdX focuses on. We started on Ethereum, then we were one of the early users of the layer 2 on Starkware. And two years ago, the engineering team involved in dYdX decided it was a time for dYdX, given our size, to be able to build our own chain. So dYdX is now an application chain or an app chain. So we are sizable enough to not rely on someone else's infrastructure anymore, but now the community and token holders have been essentially enabling people to build the full stack from the chain itself to the application layer. And that makes a big difference to keep delivering on your agenda and on your roadmap of being the largest DeFi protocol for crypto derivatives.
Nice. And could you explain why the derivative market is so big, even though the number of people is comparatively small, the amount that they invest is comparatively big? And that probably leads to my next question about liquidity on demand. Could you just dive a bit deeper and explain why that's important, but also what's the problem that you're solving, what's the current state, and how other protocols are providing liquidity?
Absolutely. So you're definitely right. Crypto derivative is kind of a niche market. This is the largest niche market, bigger than the spot market. It's more towards institutional traders, market makers, crypto hedge funds, and also sophisticated prosumers. What we mean by prosumers is essentially traders which are very sophisticated. Usually they will use API. So today about 80% of the trading volume on dYdX comes via API. This could be a very big shop, such as a large market maker. This could be also an independent trader, which will essentially design some strategies and apply those strategies via some API. So this is why dYdX is a bit different from the other exchanges. It focuses on one product, and this product is fairly sophisticated, so it brings another type of users. These users are smaller in size, in terms of numbers, but very well funded. So they are very important for our market in general. So that's why on average days, dYdX move about $1 billion of trading volume. So that's really impressive for one protocol only, but because of its focus on this very specific market that are crypto derivative. Over the past 9 months, since the birth of dYdX chain, the chain recorded $225 billion of trading volume. So that's almost $1 billion a day, right? So market goes up and down. Some days are higher than others, but overall, it's a very high level of activity. So talking about liquidity, liquidity comes from these very large users, should they be on the taker side or maker side. So they just build together around this marketplace a very sizable marketplace. On this sizable marketplace, as I was mentioning, there is more than 100 plus trading pairs. But all these trading pairs are not equally, I would say, popular. Obviously, Bitcoin and Ethereum don't need liquidity support. They are already very popular and they are already very, very much in demand. If you go down the list of tradable markets on the dYdX protocol, you will find some meme coins, you will find some altcoins, which will be much less popular. So the problem we're trying to solve is today on the DeFi protocol or centralized exchanges. The liquidity the users are finding on the marketplace is, for the most part, coming from two different, I would say, subset of users. Either it's an organic liquidity, so for example, Bitcoin and Ethereum, there is enough demand on the maker side and taker side to basically get enough liquidity for all the type of usage and market. When it comes to an altcoin or a meme coin, the liquidity might be big for a week, 10 days, and then it shrinks and it then re-expand. So then you have a problem of liquidity. So liquidity on centralized exchanges or decentralized exchanges can come either from being organic or coming from market makers. And some centralized exchanges will essentially reward market maker to bring liquidity. Some projects will also reward market maker or maybe engage with a market maker to say, okay, bring liquidity to my token in these different trading venues, should they be CeFi or DeFi. But these liquidity services come with a cost, right? And this cost can be very high. And you need to find also the right partners. This is why the market maker industry is a very large one, because there is a lot of demand and they all get their, I would say, their specific knowledge. Some of them are extremely good in CeFi, some of them are really focusing on DeFi. The provision of liquidity is a subset of our industry in general, an important one. What we're trying to solve with this upgrade of dYdX Unlimited is to, in a decentralized manner, to provide liquidity to both, to all the extreme of the order book. So liquidity is organic and very healthy on Bitcoin, it's the top 5, let's say. But then if you go in at the end of the order book, this liquidity can really shrink, and then the user experience can be not as optimal as possible. So let's say you want to buy $5,000 of a meme coin, but maybe there is only liquidity for $2,000. So then if you come with a $10,000 order, you will essentially get high slippage and you will trade against yourself, because this trading pair specifically is not optimal or is not deserved by enough liquidity. So what we're trying to solve is really reverse engineering everything and thinking from a user perspective. If you want to trade a meme, a cat meme, for example, and this cat meme is not fashionable yet or not as fashionable as last week, we want to make sure that the protocol itself has designed this a mini AMM so that it can provide a good experience for the users and the traders when they want to engage into a trade of a long tail asset. So it's really rethinking how we can, at protocol level, with the right code and the right incentive, provide liquidity all over the order book so that the users can come and say, whenever I come to dYdX, I got the best experience, but also the best pricing, depending on the size of the trade you want to do.
Could you explain a bit further where that initial liquidity comes from and potentially the risk associated with it? Because if you're providing liquidity for tokens that are comparatively volatile, I can see how that could potentially be a problem for the liquidity providers, would be my initial take, but please tell me a bit more.
It's a great question. So liquidity via AMMs comes with impermanent loss potentials, right? So when the order book within the AMM gets a little bit imbalanced, you are at risk if you provide liquidity there to essentially suffer a little bit the inefficiencies of the smart contract. So in the design of the dYdX Unlimited, there is this mega vault which will be operated by a third party. So, and this mega vault will essentially keep scanning the different trading pairs within the dYdX ecosystem and allocating, I would say, additional liquidity wherever there is a need for that. So if suddenly there is a trading pair of a meme coin which is starting getting activity and there is some kind of tension in the liquidity and the spread, automatically and with a kind of guidance of this third party, they will be able to allocate and say, oh, we see more activities there, we allocate liquidity there. So the goal is to reduce the impermanent loss problem you might have and being much more active into the liquidity provision and it's so-called the liquidity on demand, rather than having just one market, which is, I would say, staying with the liquidity provided originally. So I would say the user journey or the project journey within the new version of dYdX, projects will be able to list their assets. So they will get listed on the dYdX protocol via governance or via a system of automation. But then they can also decide to say, okay, I'm going to be listed on dYdX and I'm going to provide also liquidity. So nothing stops for projects to essentially say, I'm going to get listed and I'm also going to bring maybe 50K, 100K or more of liquidity to make sure that the experience is right. And on top of it, nothing stops users or market makers or allocators to say, okay, this trading pair is promising. I'm going to be bringing liquidity to this specific one. On the top of this, like an umbrella, there is this mega vault, which brings APR potentially to the users who wants to allocate USDC there, which will be actively, I would say, being actively managed to essentially bring liquidity where there is opportunity and making sure that there is limited exposure to risk, or at least well understood exposure to the risk of impermanent losses.
Nice. And just the final question about the liquidity is, how do you incentivize people to provide liquidity? What's the business model behind it? And could you compare that with the TradFi, but also the way that other protocols are managing it? You might not have like inside information how other people are doing it, but just like the average or the standard.
So on centralized exchanges, usually the centralized exchanges, to the best of my knowledge, will not provide really much incentive. Maybe projects will come to a large centralized exchange and saying, okay, I'm listed on this exchange. I would like my tokens to get more liquidity. So they might engage an external market maker. This market maker will provide liquidity on this specific exchange or maybe on a selection of exchanges, right? So that's how liquidity is brought into CeFi. In DeFi, nothing stops also projects to say, okay, bring liquidity to my token on CeFi and DeFi as well. So that's how liquidity is provided today. dYdX provide incentive for liquidity providers in the form of rewards. So there is via the DAO and the community votes for the different seasons of, so to say, trading campaigns and trading rewards campaign. So that essentially a third party, again, because we are decentralized, we look at the order book, we look at where the protocol wants to progress, what are the upgrades of the technology which allows better capital allocation, and essentially deciding how much dYdX rewards will be brought to liquidity providers. They can be users like you and me, they could be also market makers, and then we essentially incentivize the liquidity provisions on dYdX. So this works through campaigns of 6 weeks. So the season 6 of dYdX trading competitions and rewards campaign just ended, and we start again in a few weeks as soon as the dYdX Unlimited get launched. So you try to find mechanisms. At dYdX, we do it at the protocol level with the support of the governance and the community. Some privately run exchanges, I don't know, Coinbase or some others, might have incentive, or maybe the projects will just come and say, I'm not happy with like the depth of the book of my token on Binance. So they can be in touch with a third-party market maker and say, can you trade on this trading pair to bring better activity and better experience for the people who want to get exposure to my token.
Nice. And just to move away from liquidity, earlier on, you're explaining how you're aiming to create this perfect flywheel. Could you tell me a bit more about your tokenomics? And before the interview, we discussed that you're kind of changing it and amending it to fit the community better. So could you just tell me what are you doing, but also explain the thought process behind it? Why are you doing it and why now?
Absolutely. So dYdX token existed originally on Ethereum as if dYdX, right? So at the time, the dYdX protocol was sitting on the layer 2 on Ethereum. Then fast forward, dYdX chain came to birth. So the community decided to essentially migrate away the tokens away from Ethereum and bring them to the dYdX chain. So today we've got close to 70% of the dYdX tokens in existence which have migrated and which are on the chain, either staked or being just on the chain itself, ensuring the security of the chain, right? At the genesis of the dYdX chain, the dYdX token came as a pure utility token and governance token. So essentially, users, if they decide, they can stake tokens with validators and get rewards for providing security services on the chain. 9 months after the genesis, there is community conversations happening right now, which are thinking, okay, the token today does the job. It brings security. It incentivizes more security and a high level of security on the chain by incentivizing stakers. But maybe there is additional utility functions we can bring to the token. The token could be maybe used as a collateral to provide liquidity. The token could be doing different things within the dYdX chain ecosystem to bring more use cases and essentially having more use cases for the token overall. That's a conversation which is happening within the community. If you go to the dYdX forum, you will see a lot of conversations around this topic, and we will see how people eventually evolve and how they decide and kind of balance the benefits, the potential reward of this upgrade of the token economics as well. But I think it's coming right now because it's a good time to keep building anyway. And we, as a community, we reached already like the first mission of the token. The first mission of the token was to enable the genesis of the dYdX chain and secure the chain. Today the chain is highly functional, $225 billion of trading volumes. Today the token is also allows stakers to receive rewards. So $45 million in USDCs have been distributed to stakers and validators since the genesis of the chain. So there is, I would say, the first mission has been accomplished, right? And now we can start to think and saying, okay, on the security side and performance side, we are well settled now. Are there any additional use cases for the token which can be explored? This is what's happening right now.
And what are the additional features that the community would like to add? But could you also run me through the voting process of how they will vote on it and how it will be decided what will be added and what not? And like, what's the time frame as well? When do you think that will happen?
So the conversation can last many weeks, sometimes months, and until some kind of soft consensus appears within forums or Discord, no one will really take the initiative to go for a proposal. So the path of governance, to come back to your question, people will discuss about potential new trading pairs or new token economics or upgrade of software. And then eventually they fall into a soft consensus. So they decide to essentially launch a governance proposal vote on chain. This is something which is very well documented within the protocol, and anyone can make a proposal for voting. So if you want to launch tomorrow the Charles token, you can say we are fans of Charles and we want to launch a token. You can go and do a governance proposal and saying let's launch the Charles token. And let's see if the community and the users of dYdX are thinking, oh, we don't want this altcoin. This makes no sense. Or actually, there is something there, and actually, I will possibly trade it. So yes, I will vote in favor. So there is today about 25,000 stakers on dYdX. They are staking with 60 plus validators, which are active validators. So when the governance proposal is out, there is usually a period, depending on the topic of the proposal. Some proposal will be lasting 4 days for voting period. Some others will last a little bit more, but most of the time it's 4 days. So within 4 days, people have the opportunity to come and vote and say, I'm in favor, I'm against, or I'm against with veto. If they don't vote, usually their validators will vote on their behalf, but you can also always vote ahead of time. Right? And then the results comes to at the end of the voting period and is automatically enabled by the chain itself. So this is how the governance works. And to come back to token economics or some new trading pairs, it's always passed through the governance. So since Genesis, the dYdX Foundation went through 140 plus different votes. Some votes were about should we upgrade to the new version of the software. And some other votes were should we list this new token. Another upgrade will be should we fund the DAO for an additional period of time. Another vote will be okay, the seasons of rewards to a liquidity provider ends. Are we all agreeing that this liquidity providers and their rankings are in line with the accounting, and are we agreeing that the protocol will distribute the rewards to them? So it's very fascinating to see how DeFi is properly made. And there is many things in our industry which is labeled DeFi, but is only DeFi so much. Sometimes there is an order book which is off-chain. Sometimes there is a small set of validators or no validators. There is all kind of things, right? It's still very experimental. But what we are striving for and what we are really focusing on delivering on since the beginning of the dYdX project is to be clear about our identity. You cannot be CFI and DeFi at the same time. You need to choose one side. And if as soon as the technology enables you to be further on one side, should it be DeFi or CFI, you should go for it. So this is why at some point the technology was there to launch the app chain dYdX. That's why the community and developers launched the dYdX chain. So this is really how it's happening. And some boats are successful, some others are just failing. Some people come with an idea and eventually it's a no, and then we move on. And some others will be a yes, or some others will be long conversations, but eventually the soft consensus does not really come in place, and the conversation kind of fade, or maybe can rebirth a little bit later.
Nice. And talking about the structure of dYdX, you have the foundation and you have dYdX team. And my next question is about the dYdX website that you mentioned. It's not necessarily associated with the foundation, but it was compromised in the latest DNC attacks. So could you explain to me what exactly happened? Because a lot of people were speculating around it. A lot of people were posting on X. But also, could you explain what's your role within it and the entire structure of dYdX as a broader question there?
Absolutely. So let's start with the mapping of the ecosystem overall, right? What kind of organizations are around dYdX, and then we can come back to this DNS attack which happened a few months ago now. So dYdX was created by dYdX Trading, which is registered in New York. The company was founded by Antonio Giuliano, which is the founder of dYdX, right? Over the history of dYdX, eventually dYdX started to decentralize. So now if you take a picture of the ecosystem of dYdX, I'm happy to share a picture with you for sharing with the audience. You've got essentially 5 organizations which are fully dedicated to dYdX. Number one is dYdX Trading. There are 60 plus engineers focusing on developing the dYdX open source software. This open source software is then deployed by validators which create and upgrade the dYdX chain. So dYdX Trading is one entity. Another entity is the dYdX Foundation. I'm the CEO of the dYdX Foundation. We are close to 20 people full-time over multiple countries. And we are really in charge of making sure the governance is active and gets the high velocity it deserves to make sure that the protocol keeps progressing. We do a lot of work in terms of marketing as well. We do a lot of work in community building, in brand awareness. We have a team, a solution team, which is helping users to essentially understand the documentations and maybe connect to dYdX. So a little bit of explanation and hand-holding on deploying and interacting with this open source software. So that's the second entity. Then you've got 2 decentralized autonomous organizations, 2 DAOs. One is a grants DAO. It's essentially funding external projects building on dYdX or for dYdX. Then we have the operation DAO, which is a DAO dedicated to providing services to the chain, such as an indexer, some relayers, and some other services which are highly technical. And then there is an upcoming DAO. So that will be 3 DAOs in the ecosystem of dYdX. It's in conversations in the forum. It looks like there is something happening very soon, which will be the Community Treasury Management DAO. So the dYdX token holders are essentially have a say on the protocol treasury. The protocol treasury represents hundreds of millions of US dollars in value of dYdX tokens. So far, these tokens have been, part of them have been allocated to project, but another part has been just sitting on the protocol without doing anything. So the community decided to say, okay, it's a shame to have this dYdX token sitting on the protocol and not being put to work for staking, for example, and generating revenues for the treasury. So there is a treasury DAO conversations now, and I'm confident this conversation will evolve. So that will mean that dYdX will essentially, as a protocol, open source software protocol, get the contribution from 5 different companies, and out of these 5 different companies and entities, there will be 3 DAOs. So 3 DAOs is very rare, I can tell you, in DeFi. I think the real DeFi projects, which you can see around us, Maker is one of them. Many others are labeled themselves as DeFi, but they're not really decentralized. And this is something we really want to strive on at dYdX. So beyond these 5 entities, there is probably 1,000 people, 1,000 people working on dYdX. They can be validators, relayers, researchers. There is just a multitude of entities and people contributing to this open source software. So that's how you build some kind of dYdX army, right? There is some core contributors and people which are full-time, but there is also a large number of companies which are working and building for and with dYdX. So that's how it's operating as an open source protocol. A little bit like Linux upgrade itself, a little bit like MakerDAO also has different companies, or Aave. This is the way you do real DeFi. Your next question was about this DNS attack, which happened a few months ago. So this DNS attack happened on one domain name which belongs to dYdX Trading. dYdX Trading still operates partially an Ethereum-based exchange, whereas actually most of the community is working exclusively on the dYdX chain itself, right? And Squarespace, where the domain name was registered, has been Google, where the domain name was registered, sold its domain business to Squarespace. And without going into too many details, within this transition, at some point there was some hack opportunity which the hacker captured, right? So a number of Squarespace customers, not exactly the same issue as we have, right? So thankfully there was no damage done. It was just enough actions was made to control the damage, and everything was kind of get back on track. But yes, the incident happened. If people want to get the full detail, the best way for them is to go on the dYdX.exchange blog section, and there is a full kind of timeline of the event and explaining what happened and what has been put in place. But that I will say that's more for the legacy side of dYdX, the Ethereum part of dYdX. On the dYdX chain itself, it never suffered any hack. It's extremely solid, and there was no such issue.
Yeah, to move to a slightly trendy topic, the Fed will be cutting rates on the 18th of September, and everyone is talking about it. You're very involved within the trading community. So could you tell me your take on it? A lot of people are speculating that it will be 0.25 points or 50. What's your take on it? What do you think that the Fed should do?
I'm not an economist, so I cannot tell you how much they're going to cut and when. I think people are expecting a lot, and sometimes we've been it was a little bit deceptive to think like, okay, it's coming, and it was not coming. But definitely there is probably some actions coming up, right? So I think there is 2 things the market pay attention to: is the cut of the rates, as well as the U.S. elections, which will be very influential on how the Fed will also play with this rates playbook, right? I don't know, 0.25, 0.50. I have absolutely no idea. I think it's more in the context of many different complexities in the economy. Keep in mind that we have a war going on, several wars maybe going on in the world. So it's definitely uncertain times. But I will say I'm not worried about uncertain times so much, because I believe we are more into uncertain timing. We know that the governments will need to support their economy. We know that the governments are probably changing presidents, or at least there will be like a new president, and this will bring just more activity from governments and more easing, and we've seen this cycle in the past. So I have no idea of the timeline, but I think I'm not worried about the timeline so much. I just know that this is happening. It's coming our way. And in the meantime, at dYdX, we keep building. We are focusing on our market. We cannot really play against the market. Right? It's such a very global, massive beast that you want to keep the pulse and trying to see what's going on. But sometimes you just know that you have to keep building and being prepared for onboarding your next hundreds of thousands of users. And when will they come? You don't know exactly the timing. But I'm very positive that the market of crypto in general is getting more attention, is getting much more I would say, approvals within government. We see stable coins, we see CBDCs, of course, the ETF, which you probably covered multiple times, are showing that there is more and more access points to our space, and it's overall going to be beneficial. But I think crypto is also becoming macro now, or very related to macro. So even though sometimes we can say, oh, great performance, great activity within the crypto space, but it might not be reflected into the pricing of the crypto assets because they get more and more influenced by macro in general. Something also I always note and mention to people, crypto remain like a very risky asset class, right? So whenever there is a bumps in the overall global economy, large market allocators and asset allocators will be essentially get a read of the high risk side of their portfolio, and crypto is still a high risk side. So this is why it's very volatile, because people, whenever they feel a little bit worried or they have question marks about the global environment, they will quickly look at their portfolio, and the risky asset will go first. But they're going to come back quickly whenever there is good opportunity for growth also. So this is where the volatility is coming from.
How do you think these external factors like the US elections, the Fed potentially cutting rates, wars happening over the world will affect the ecosystem? Do you obviously, ideally, you can give me a prediction of what your at least like framework on like how do you look at it? I don't expect you to say what exactly will happen in 3 months, but just to draw a wider picture of what do you think would happen in the next year or 2 or 5.
I think the foundations of what we are building is essentially decentralized trust. This is the promise of Bitcoin, of Ethereum, and many other protocols, right? And the trust is being challenged everywhere. People don't trust the government as much as before, or they see how the government's finance is getting in shape, and this is sometimes really ugly. They see also very high social instability, or sometimes war happening. So people are looking for places where they can anchor their trust. And the challenge the mental challenge in our industry is we are building trustless technology, but we are still in the business of trust. At least for dYdX, we are in DeFi. DeFi is decentralized finance, and finance is a business of trust. So we are building software to eventually kind of solve the trust issue, but you still want to trust somewhere. Your trust cannot stay in the air. At some point, you're going to say, oh, I trust more dYdX than someone else, or I trust more Coinbase than someone else. Everyone has his own trust, right? So this is really the foundations of this. I think fast forward, if we look at 3-5 years, I don't want to go further than that, there will be people entering the space of crypto via stable coins, which are very easy for people to comprehend and kind of start using. We see the big credit card issuers, MasterCard and the Visa of the world getting involved with stable coins right now. But there will be also people coming in the world of crypto without knowing via CBDCs, the stable coin from the central banks, right? And then there will be a new wave of users which might be coming via gaming and some other access point to the industry. But overall, I think it's going to be just slowly but extremely powerful. The same way the internet started at the beginning, very questionable, probably. I'm 46 years old, so I have seen the internet when I was kids, starting from zero, and people were saying, I will never put my credit card online. And today, everyone puts his credit cards online on multiple apps without thinking, right? The technology has been evolving, and there was some kind of industry rules and regulations as well coming up. So I think this trend will keep evolving, and will not be called Web3 for too long. I think it's just going to be the internet, and some people will come from the early adopter group, which have been playing with DeFi and NFTs, and some others will be the next cohort, which will be just users of stablecoins, users of crypto in general. And you've got within these big narratives, you've got like sub-narratives, like the new gold is Bitcoin, or the new oil is Ethereum, and the list goes on, right? But I really think this is how it's impacting our industries, and also how people look around them and start to think, okay, maybe my currency depreciated by 40% this year. I'd better look at better solutions. And then they look around, and what is available for them to research and appreciate is possibly crypto, stable coins, and bringing just more access to people. But there is a lot of people being challenged in their everyday life. I mean, in Singapore here, there is none of these problems. But if you speak to people coming from Turkey or from Japan or many other places, their life savings have been depreciated by 40% plus, and they did nothing wrong. It's just the economy which was not properly managed. Maybe the central banks misbehave or behave in a way that just the currency collapsed. And this is a very strong signal for many people which come to crypto not for the NFTs, not for just for finding a solutions to kind of get back a little bit or protect at least their saving from their local currencies being totally damaged by governments or just the economy overall.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And Nigeria and India are two of the countries that are accepting and using stable coins and other form of crypto just because their currency is devaluing. And you mentioned earlier that the trust towards the government is deteriorating, and I kind of agree with it. And it's quite controversial topic about power with Europe, but the reason that I'm asking is because you're French. So what's your opinion on it? And I completely understand if you want to stay impartial and you don't feel comfortable commenting on that. But it made waves within the crypto industry, and mainly because France was criticizing Russia when they wanted to arrest him and they wanted to have control over Telegram, and now they've arrested him 5-6 years later. So what's your stand on it?
I think we are educated everywhere in the world to think governments are thinking deeply and they know things and they build things very thoughtfully. But the reality is they're not. And they are also very reactive to what's happening around them. Should it be an opportunity for communication or a political opportunity for a short period of time, and then being caught up back by some regulations they put in place some years ago. So I don't think governments are extremely smart organizations. The same way companies can do mistakes, governments do plenty of them, and government have very large topic in their hand, right? So to come back to the French, these French reactions to the founder of Telegram, I don't think this is very smart. I don't think the French will be the only one to make this kind of mistake or this kind of behaviors. But nothing to be really proud of. But yeah, as I said, I think they are very reactive and things are changing very fast. It just goes too fast for this kind of organization. So you might see people thinking one way at some point in time, another way at another point. But yes, it also shows that what we are building in general are very big topic of very high importance. And if you look at the kind of messaging apps, it's a very, very large topic. WhatsApp is not functional in every country, or not fully functional in every country. Some countries will block social media for a long time, right? So this French story is a story of the moment, and I've been following this closely. But if you look back, we got part of the world not having access to YouTube, part of the world not having access to social media in general, part of the world where if you want to operate in a country, you have to give away the private key so the government can listen to anyone anytime. So it's all over us, right? So I think it's important what we're building, and just stay resilient in building something which is sustainable, which is also healthy. I don't think the zero rules is really beneficial to many. We need to have at least a framework. But yes, this kind of I would say spot events are happening again and again in the past, and they will be happening in the future as well. We see that, for example, with stablecoins. Stablecoins, USDT was known as being extremely free and high velocity and widely distributed stablecoin. But you hear here and there every month and then that USDT will freeze some accounts because they are doing some verifications and some kind of AML on the transactions within their network. USDC has been doing it for a long time also. So I think it's happening everywhere. And we just want to be pragmatic and also be aware that the government, whenever they build Web3 or whenever they think about Web3, should it be for stablecoin, for CBDCs, there is also some basic rules in each of our countries. Should it be American, should it be European or Asian, where privacy is already part of the law. So sometimes the government will want to take some freedom and maybe give some space to an entrepreneur, but eventually they will be caught up internally by their own government saying, we've been voting this 100 years ago, and this is like the fundamentals of our industry. We need to have freedom, or we need to have protections, or we need to have a mix of freedom and protections. And then the topic becomes very, very complex. But when I was with Consensus, I built together with many multiple CBDC projects with central banks. And many people came to me now and then asking, like, do you feel comfortable to build a CBDC? Don't you think CBDC is evil and the government will control your money and maybe remove the money from your wallet? And I always told the people that's a very good thing. That's very important to think about this. That's very important to stay vigilant and to keep your eyes open and be vocal about this. But you want to be also realistic. Today, your bank account, if you misbehave, someone will get the police involved and the bank will freeze your money.
Yeah.
And this is the case for already probably 50 or 80 years, right?
Exactly what happened in Canada. Yeah.
So it's not specific to us. It's overall how the world works, and thinking that people can follow you everywhere. You check in your hotel a few hours ago with your credit card. So if someone needs to know where you are or how many nights you stay in your hotel, someone will know. Visa will tell someone, right? Or MasterCard or some others. So there is already a lot of fundamentals of our democracies or whatever country you come from, or a flavor of the democracy you're living in, which are based on the top of what we are working. So it's important to keep striving and working on these topics, which are extremely important, but not be too emotional or trying to dig deeper and think, okay, what happened 20 years over these topics? And many people have been fighting for privacy. And that's why we get a certain level of privacy today.
Yeah. There's so much to unpack. So thank you.
This is why the crypto rabbit hole is so fascinating. Because sometimes you enter crypto for the tech, and then you start to understand, like, how is money working?
Yeah.
This is what happened to me when I started my Bitcoin journey. I was familiar with peer-to-peer file sharing at the time, so I knew the peer-to-peer side of things. I was very familiar and I understood it very well. And then someone shared with me the Satoshi white paper, which was saying peer-to-peer money. I was like, yeah, I know peer-to-peer, I know money, let's have a look. And then I started to read, and I started to read some of the things and comments of people on this paper. And then I came to the realization that at my young age, I was not understanding money.
Yeah.
And then it made me look into money more. And then I understood the power of the tech. Beyond just moving or updating a ledger here and there, there was like totally a new generation of money, which was possibly solving some of the issues money had over time. But this is, I think, why a certain number of people are staying in the industry, because you start to think much more deeply about some topics which are enabled by crypto. So I'm sure you and your viewers are also passionate about the space, and there is always a new rabbit hole for you if you want to dig in.
Yeah, 100%. That's how I got into crypto. I started reading about Bitcoin, and then read the Bitcoin standard, read the white paper, and then all the way in the rabbit hole. Yeah, it's a very fascinating journey. So thank you so much for sharing your story and what you guys are building with dYdX. Thanks so much for your hard work and everything they've done for the industry. So it's such a pleasure to talk to you all.
Thank you so much, and see you on the dYdX chain.
Yeah.
Thank you.